Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. The first few rays of dawn were sneaking above the horizon as Illegitimate sand walked along the walls of the Red Keep. The gulls would shriek in the sky upon occasion, breaking the quiet of the morning. She still found peace in the early morning hours, when the world was quiet and she could think. She felt adrift on the sea, alone though she was with her family. Her mother now felt a stranger to her. Her brother Jon, she could scarce look upon him without thinking of what she knew. She feared that she might tell him and was angry that he didn't know. Her father, she had spent so many years dreaming of meeting him, of spending time with him. He had been so kind, so wonderful when they had met. Exactly as her mother had always said, but how could she see him the same way now that she knew he had killed her uncle? She knew that she should be glad of her family's presence. She knew that she should be glad of Jon's increase in standing, yet she felt little joy or security in King's Landing. She wanted to go home, to the places she had known all her life. The world had made sense at Starfall. The world had been simple before her father had come south, when he was a myth written in letters and words spoken by her mother. She studied the horizon, watching the sky grow lighter as the sun broke above the sea. She would have to return to her room soon to break her fast with her family. She wondered when they would meet with their father again. She wondered how long she could keep herself from telling Jon of his birth. He had known something was wrong when he hugged her in welcome last night. He was the brother in whom she had always confided, but now, with a heavy sigh, she looked up and saw a man walking toward her with two large animals beside him. She froze. The direwolves approached her quickly, and he ran to catch up with them, shouting their names. She breathed again when they stopped in front of her and began to sniff her thoroughly. "I am so sorry, my lady," he said when he reached the wolves. "They are normally better behaved." "They seem to like me," she said, laughing nervously. "So it seems, Grey Wind, Nymeria, to me. Leave her alone." The wolves eventually complied, each licking her hand briefly before sitting near him. He smiled apologetically. "I am truly sorry if they frightened you. Normally they are much better behaved. They have been penned inside the Godswood most of the time since our arrival. I didn't expect anyone to be here." "It's quite all right," she replied. She studied his face and the red shine of his hair, and she laughed to herself. "I am amazed that you seem so fearless with them. They seem friendly enough for direwolves, and I have heard of them before seeing them." He eyes her curiously. "You are Dornish." "Aye," she replied, laughing lightly to herself. "And you are from the north." She wondered idly how long she could pretend to not know him, but knew that she would tell him momentarily. "Robb Stark," he said, extending his hand in greeting that he might kiss hers. When he released her hand, he continued, "I am the heir of Winterfell." "I know who you are," she giggled. "I'm Alicent, your sister." He laughed with her, shaking his head. "It seems that none of us were meant to be introduced properly." "No, little brother, it would seem not." "Little brother, now that's a new thought," he smiled uncomfortably. "This all seems so strange, meeting you, Jon, and Arthur." It was a feeling with which she had grown accustomed. "I know the feeling. Though having spent the past several months with Sansa and Arya, I must say that I enjoy getting to know my sisters. I feel the same about Jon and Arthur. We've sparred a few times over the past few weeks. I heard that father has taken the three of you into the city. He showed us around, took us to see the jewelers, armorers, and weaponsmiths. He's having them make something for each of us, from you to Rickon, but he wouldn't say what. Perhaps he wishes to surprise us all." He walked toward the parapet, the direwolves pacing behind him. "I know. You're just impatient to learn what the surprise is." He smirked. "You know me already. I know my brothers. You are the same age as Jon, and Arthur's scarcely younger than you, not surprising that you'd be similar." She started laughing, and moved to stand beside him. "Though I do wonder which of you is the best sword. I am thus far, though Jon has not been able to train for long periods of time. He's still healing from his injuries. He has always been the best of us when training, though we have each bested him a time or two." "Each?" He stared at her in shock. "You have trained at swords with our brothers?" She subtly lifted her skirt to the side, and he saw the thin blade which was strapped to her leg. "In Dorne, many women train with swords. Most of us do so privately, as we wish to be considered ladies. But many of us look to Queen Nymeria as the model of what we wish to be. My mother never learned to wield a blade, but Prince Oberyn trained me beside his daughters. Arya was very happy to learn that her interests were rather common in Dorne. Were you the one who gave her the little blade she carries? I was, he admitted. She loved to watch Bran and I train, and thought it terribly unfair that she wasn't allowed. I knew that it would be a long time until I saw her again, so I asked our smith to make one for her. She's a quick study. I think you should see her at work. You'll be impressed. I will be certain to ask her when we break our fast this morning. You must have noticed how dark her expression grew, for he seemed concerned. Is something the matter? No, she forced a smile. It's only, I've spent the past several months with our sisters. Now, it just seems strange to not be together. Oh, well, Father won't keep us apart. No, she replied darkly. But your mother might not appreciate the presence of myself or my brothers. He frowned. No, you are likely right. I'm sorry. Her lips twisted in a wry smile. It is no fault of yours, however. As I think of breaking our fasts, I believe that I should return to my rooms so that I might eat with that part of my family. Of course. It was nice meeting you. She favored him with a genuine smile. I am glad to have met you. She turned and took a few steps away before turning back. Rob, do you like riding? He laughed, surprised by the question. I do. We should go riding together soon. I'd like that. I'll hold you to it, she laughed, turning away again. She walked along the walls, then down the tower, which led to the courtyard. She walked to the maiden vault, and then up the staircases and along the corridors, until she reached her family's rooms. Her Aunt Illyria and Uncle Beric were already seated in the common room, each of them writing at the large table in the center of the room. Illyria looked up at her. Did you enjoy your walk? Not as much as I enjoy riding, but it was nice. I met my half-brother Rob. He was taking the direwolves for a walk. Direwolves in the Red Keep, Beric muttered. What madness made the king think that allowing them in the castle was a good idea? They seemed tame, terrifying. But tame, where else would they have been kept? Beric looked up at her, a hint of humor in his eyes. Beyond that wall of ice in the far north. She laughed. Father allowed my half-siblings to keep them and train them. I've heard that Rob even used his in battle. It still sounds like madness to keep such a beast as a pet, Illyria said. Alicine walked to the table and seated herself beside her aunt. Perhaps it is, but I wouldn't mind having one. Illyria shook her head. And where would you keep a direwolf? I don't know. Why is no one else awake? I'm hungry. Your mother returned very late, and your brothers and cousin are still asleep from having spent most of the night chattering away, which you were part of, her aunt replied. And I was still awake before dawn, as I always am. You'll want to sleep by the mid-afternoon, her uncle said. She stuck out her tongue in protest. I'll be fine. If that is what you believe, Illyria teased. Well, our food should arrive soon. Why don't you get Edric and Lucas up? She wrinkled her nose. Fine. It's better than trying to pry Jon away from Ty or ever attempting to wake up Arthur. Her aunt and uncle laughed while she stood and walked to the rooms of her brother and cousin. Edric, she knew, was the easiest to wake up, followed by Jon, then Lucas. As predicted, Edric awoke with little fuss while Lucas required a bit more encouragement, namely being tickled until he was genuinely awake. While she was waking them up, her aunt and uncle worked on waking up the rest of the family. By the time they were all awake and dressed, the servants had arranged trays of food in the dining area of their suite. Upon the trays were blackberry honey cakes, fried fish, soft-boiled duck eggs, and fire peppers stuffed with goat cheese, with chilled ale and steaming hot tea to drink. They sat around the table together. Ashara, Alysanne, Jon, Tyenn, Arthur, Lucas, Edric, Illyria, and Beric, Dondarrion. Alysanne couldn't help but smile to be surrounded by her family. Her misgivings from earlier in the morning faded as she realized that she was home, even in a strange place, because she was with her family. They talked as they ate. They spoke of their family who were home, running Starfall and Blackhaven. Lord Dondarrion's brother, Sir Iwan, had returned safely from the war and was again assisting Lady Sirin with the management of Blackhaven in Beric and Illyria's absence. Edric's mother, Lady Marissa, was still managing the affairs of Starfall, though her letters spoke of how strangely quiet Starfall had become since everyone's departure. Tyenn very briefly spoke of her reunion with her father and eldest sister, but otherwise preferred to avoid the subject of family. I met Rob this morning, Alice eventually informed them. Oh, Where did you see him? Jon asked. I was taking a walk along the battlements, and Robb was taking the wolves for a walk along the battlements at the same time. Lucas sat up straight. You got to see the dire wolves. Albus laughed. Hey, and they could eat you whole. His nose wrinkled, annoyed. Arya has one of them, and she's smaller than me. Beric regarded the youngest Sand sternly. Which means that the beast might eat her and then still have room for you. The wolves were kind, Alice protested. Though they should be respected, as should any beast we tame. Would you treat a hawk like a cat? Ashara laughed lightly, shaking her head. Really, Beric, I have faith that Lord Stark would not have allowed his children to have the wolves, nor brought them within the Red Keep, if they were not tamed. In other matters, she turned to the children. Your father spoke with me last night and said that he intends to meet with you today. While her brothers seemed pleased to know they would be meeting with their father, Alice fretted. She didn't know what to think of him after learning so many painful truths. Thankfully, Arthur spoke up, distracting her. Father was at the feast last night. Their mother's eyes narrowed. Yes, and his wife. It was, all things considered, an uncomfortable event. However, the king and Princess Arianne seemed to be working splendidly well together, which is all that matters. More than one person at the table regarded Ashara with skepticism, but they let the matter pass. After they had finished dining, a messenger arrived from Lord Stark formally requesting the children's presence at the midday meal in a few hours. They told the messenger that they would gladly attend, and he left. They spent the rest of the morning on various tasks, until the time arrived for the children to all share the midday meal with their father. When it was time for the midday meal, Ned was greeted by the sight of 7 children entering the room to dine with him. Robb, Sansa, and Arya entered first, followed several minutes later by Aeson, Jon, Arthur, and a younger boy, who he rightly assumed was Lucas. Good day, father, Aeson said. May I introduce you to Lucas, my youngest brother? Lucas, this is our father, Lord Eddard Stark, and our half-brother Robb. Ned walked toward the boy and knelt so that he was at eye level with him. Hello, Lucas, he said, holding his hand out in greeting. The boy accepted his hand tentatively. After a few moments' consideration, he spoke up. You look like Jon, just old. Ned and his children all laughed. And you look a bit like your half-brother Brandon. I'm glad to meet you. Ned stood and walked toward the table which was prepared for the midday meal. Come, let's eat and speak with one another. They were all agreed, each of them taking seats around the table. The children who had met before spoke easily, prompting the children who had spent less time together to join in. Even where they sat, seemed to be influenced by their budding friendships. Arya settled herself between Arthur and Lucas, while Sansa sat between Robb and Alysanne, Jon beside Arthur and Ned. It felt almost perfect to see all of his children, except for Bran and Rickon, together. If only all 9 could be together. You may all come and go from the Tower of the Hand as you wish, he told Ashara's children during the course of their meal. They seemed surprised, but he assured them that their mothers were both aware that they would be allowed to come and go. They were excited by his response, relieved that a barrier between them was removed. When their plates were emptied, they still spoke. Ned noticed that Idasiane was colder toward him than she had been when first they met. Given that she now knew of Jon, he could scarcely blame her for her distance. When he considered Lucas, he didn't know if he should be glad or ashamed that the boy was clearly and most decidedly his own. That he bore a resemblance to Bran, his dear boy who would never climb again, broke his heart. Tyenn Sand spent the majority of her second day in King's Landing with her sisters. She preferred Arianne's company, but her cousin had spent nearly the entire day discussing the ins and outs of her impending marriage to the king, with the king, Quentyn, Garland Tyrell, and Tyenn's father. Not that Tyenn minded spending time with her sisters. Nymeria's loss had made their presence all the more precious to her. She missed Sorella, wishing that they could all mourn together. Still, it was sweet to spend time with her family. They dined together that evening, along with Arianne, Quentyn, and Oberyn. That evening, Taisuli went to Jon, though they had spent the previous night together. Much of it had been spent with Jon's brother, sister, and cousin, until they had all gone to sleep for the evening. While the previous night had been spent mainly sleeping in one another's arms, this second night they spent enjoying the more physical nature of their relationship. When they were ready to sleep for the night, she lay curled upon his chest, her fingers idly tracing the scars he had received in battle. She was shocked by how precious he had become to her. Adelia had called it love, and maybe it was, though Catelyn couldn't quite admit that to herself yet. What she could admit was that she had been terrified that she could lose him like she had lost Nimem. Jon? She sat up, pushing her hair behind one shoulder. We should get married. He laughed. That's why we're betrothed, isn't it? She rolled her eyes. I meant sooner rather than waiting. Nowid's death, your injuries, it showed me how short and uncertain our lives can be. I don't want to wait anymore. Nothing is stopping us. He smiled at her and kissed her. Why not tomorrow? She laughed. We can, though we may need to ensure that everyone can be ready so soon. We are still so newly arrived to the city, and you just met with your whole family today. Then the next day, or whenever it best can be done, we have no reason to delay, and after Anne's wedding and coronation, we can visit the lands that the king has granted me. I'd like that. I think it would be nice to get away with just you for a little while. She gave him a quick kiss before curling under the linen blankets and pressed her back to him so that he would cuddle her. He was quick to respond, wrapping his arms around her and pressing a kiss right behind her ear. I never want you to leave me. I never will, he promised. Their families were surprised, though hardly shocked at the speed with which they chose to wed. None argued against delaying, so the preparations were made right away. 3 days later, they stood in the Red Keep's septon, surrounded by their family and friends. They were a strange gathering of nobles and bastards, with even the king of Westeros in attendance. Tinian wore white, trimmed with gold lacing and slashed with patterned orange and red silk. Jon also wore white, trimmed with silver and violet. They said their vows in the light of the seven, and at the end kissed for the first time as husband and wife. She may not have been able to say out loud how she felt for him, but none could doubt the love in her eyes as she became his wife. They had been in King's Landing for around a little over a week, when Alicent went for a ride outside the city walls, with her father, brothers, half-sister Arya, and good sister Tyenn. The direwolves came with them, eager for a run beyond the confines of the city. Sansa had chosen to remain inside. As she didn't enjoy riding, she watched her brothers all race one another, and Arya chasing after them. Arya and Lucas were still the worst riders, but they were also the youngest and would improve with time. It felt good to be out of the city, and to be riding. So much had changed in so short a span of time. Being on a horse made life feel simpler again. When they were a few miles from the city, her father reined up beside her, and they slowed to a trot beside one another. The rest of the family was ahead of them, still galloping across the fields with the wolves. We should speak, he began. She considered him curiously. Have we not been speaking? He sighed. I believe that you know what I mean. I know what your mother told you regarding Jon. She pressed her lips together for several moments before speaking. You know the most difficult part of knowing the secrets my mother told me. She turned to him angry. She had raised me to see you as a hero. She raised all of us to see you as a myth or legend. Perhaps I'm angry because I cannot understand the man you are. I cannot understand how my uncle could be the one to bring you and my mother together, and then you would be the one to slay him. I cannot understand how she would lie with you again after learning the truth, and I cannot understand why I wasn't angry with you for keeping us from you. And Jon, I wonder how long I will be able to stop myself from telling him the truth. He deserves to know. He knows something is wrong with me. They all know. Thankfully, Tag takes up most of Jon's free time, and I am not foolish enough to endanger our lives by speaking a word of this within the city. But Jon does deserve to know. Her words ended. She turned from him and looked across the landscape, bringing her horse to a stop. He was quiet for a long time before responding. I know this will not make anything easier, but I never intended for any of this to happen. Learning about your birth was one joy in the midst of all the sorrows of the war. He smiled fleetingly at her, which she reciprocated. Your mother and I have had a very complicated past, and nothing about it is easy to explain, nor does it matter at this point. I agree with you that Jon should know, but consider what you ask. Would it make Jon's life easier for him to know? She watched Jon as he rode beside Tyenn, his wife. They were laughing together. Robb slowed, making sure that Lucas and Arya were keeping up. No, she said quietly. But if I could add up the months and realize that Jon's birth was impossible, then so can someone else. She looked up at him, weary and sad. Have you thought of a lie for that? He ran a hand through his beard. No, we never considered that possibility until now. I will have a discussion with your mother about it. They were quiet for several minutes before she spoke again. Would the king truly execute us all if he knew that Jon wasn't who we say he is? Jon saved his life. You put him on the throne. The king is going to war against his own brother soon enough. I wouldn't hedge my bets with anyone who wears a crown. Kings forget friends and family soon enough, when they are comfortable in their reigns. Then the lie must be a good one, or the kingdoms will war again. If the king never learns, and he is wed to Arianne and Quentin is wed to Marguerite Tyrell, then the war which was just fought against the Lannisters will seem as nothing. Pray that the secret dies with those who know, and that we may all live at peace. She looked at Jon again, and how he rode with their siblings and his wife. I will keep the secret, no matter that Jon might in truth be her cousin. He was still her brother in every way that mattered. She could keep the lie to protect him, to keep her brother safe. She looked at Arthur, laughing with Robb and Arya. They're happy. Are you? She looked at her father again and laughed. Most days, life has been harder since you came south, though I suppose that is true for you as well. But I met you and my sisters, and Robb, I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world. He smiled at her. I wouldn't trade the time I have spent with the four of you for anything in this world either. I am sorry that I never sent for you. I will regret it for the rest of my life. She bit her lip, her eyes welling with tears. We'll be separated again, though, won't we? If you return to Winterfell, we won't be able to come. He considered her with care, his expression unreadable. You can come if I allow it. She gasped. But you never have, and your wife? My wife and I will have much to discuss before I can make any certain plans, and I will have to speak with your mother. But if I wish to invite my children to Winterfell, no one will be able to defy that order. She opened and closed her mouth wordlessly, shocked. After a few moments, she regained her voice. Do you truly mean that? He nodded solemnly. I do. I want to spend more time with each of you. Last I saw the three of you, none of you were higher than my knees. Now Jon's a married man, you're a grown woman, and Arthur is in a betrothal he would rather not have. And my eldest three sons are now men of war. Why betroth Arthur to little Marcella? He sighed. To control the Lannisters. If the king has his way, he will choose matches for every Lannister hostage we have just to ensure the loyalty of their house. He holds most of their heirs. The former princess deserves a good life. Her parents' sins should not be held above her head. By betrothing her to Arthur, she will be safe, and the crown will hold sway over Tyrion Lannister's nearest kin. Are we all just pieces in a game, then? Every one of us to be traded on best intentions to a greater cause? His expression was grim when he looked at her. Yes, though I thought your mother would have taught you that. She laughed, a bit sardonic. There are a good many things which my mother should have taught us, but she didn't. She has always preferred to live in the present rather than planning for the future. Some days I think that she believes we're still little children. I can hardly blame her for seeing you as children. Every one of you is growing too fast. Soon you will all be married and have children of your own. Very likely all of your matches will be arranged for political reason as mine own was. Will I? She considered him carefully. Do you have a match picked out for me as well? No, I don't. Choosing Taiyang for Jon was as much Aubrey's doing as it was mine, and choosing Arthur's match was as much political as it was to protect young Myrcella. Sansa's former betrothal to Joffrey Hill was a match of politics. As for the rest of you, matches will be made when the time is right. When the highest bidder makes an offer, her voice was tinged with grim humor. He gave her a wry smile. Something like that. Unlike your brothers, as our situation is less dire and you are of age, you will be involved in the process of choosing your match. Oh, I'm sure Arthur will be thrilled to learn that. He'll claim that I am being shown favoritism. You could always avoid telling him that you will be allowed a choice. She laughed. Will I always have a choice? What if the war strikes up again and it's convenient for you to marry me off? His smile was shrewd. Choose swiftly then. The king's wedding is in a few weeks, and you will be a guest. I've already had lords who are showing interest in my wife's children. When they see you, I'm sure that more than a few lords will ask for your hand. You think that lords will want a bastard's hand? Such things have happened before. Your birth may be illegitimate, but your mother and I are both well born. Your bloodline is among the best that can be offered, true-born or not. You are well educated, beautiful, and are brilliantly smart. Not to mention that your dowry will be the same as Sansa and Arya's. She gaped at him again. The same, but they are your sisters, and you are of no less value to me than they. She sobbed quietly, shocked. You are my daughter, my firstborn. I may have held Jon first, but you are the first child of mine that I ever saw, ever held. I knew then that if I could give each of you the world that I would." He reached to her and brushed away her tears. "And though I may have failed you before, I want to make a new start with each of you if I can." Laughing through her tears, she shook her head in agreement. "I think that anything is possible." He smiled at her. "Shall we go catch up to the rest of them?" "Yes, I think we should." 2 days after Ned went riding with the children, he met with Ashara. It was late in the afternoon when they met upon the same terrace where he had met with Oberyn to discuss Cersei's children. Ned's children, except for Sansa, Oberyn's older girls, and Edric Dayne, were in the training yard. The noise of the sparring would keep quiet any discussions which he and Ashara might have. His guards would prevent anyone from drawing near them, and they would be easily seen by any prying eyes. The diversion was as good as any he could improvise, and stay true to his promises that he would not be seen with Ashara in a compromising place. She arrived some time after he had and was greeted coolly by his guards. Her gown fluttered as she sat across from him. Her dress was white, trimmed with vibrantly colored embroidered flowers. He was amazed, once again, by how lovely she was. "You wanted us to meet in a public place where we might speak privately." She looked out at the yard, "and yet we meet in plain sight of all your children and Oberyn's girls. I've had a lot on my mind lately, and I want to avoid any unwarranted gossip." "Unwarranted gossip about us?" Her voice teased. "I hardly think that any meeting between us will cause unwarranted gossip. Clearly we are only meeting with regards to our children, nothing more. It must be hard work managing 7 children and assisting as hand of the king. I must say the children all seem happier for it, even Alice, who scarcely smiled since Blackhaven seems to have lifted in spirits since you went riding with her. She and I had a long conversation during our ride, which went well, I assume." "It did, and she brought up a very important point, which I need to discuss with you, and that would be a strategic lie." He looked out at their children in the yard. Yaxlien and Tyen were both showing Arya how to hold a bow. Edric and Lucas were sparring beside Robb and Obara. Meanwhile, Yaya was showing off her skills with a spear to Jon and Arthur. "If Alysanne can add up the months between my eldest 3 sons, then so can someone else. We need a second story if anyone finds the holes in the first." She tilted her head slightly, pondering. "Have you devised a tale, Ned? If anyone isn't satisfied that Jon is mine, we will claim that he is my brother Brandon's." "Brandon's? He was dead long before. We can say that he is older than we have claimed, say that he is of age with Alysanne. Brandon had a few liaisons, including at Harrenhal, any of which could have left a bastard. If we say that the mother died and that his caretakers found me when I was in the Stormlands at the end of the war, who would dispute it? Did the servants at Starfall truly account for Jon's age when he arrived?" He watched her consider all the possibilities in her mind. No one would know the difference. She sighed heavily. "It's a reasonable lie, and no one would be able to dispute it. I can easily say that I took him in so that his life would be simpler. It's close enough to the truth." She placed her head in her hands, weary. "May we never need to tell the lie or the truth. That is my greatest hope." She looked up, smiling lightly. "Was this all you wished to discuss, Ned?" He knew there was more. He knew what he needed to tell her, and to tell Catelyn. He had thought of little else for many days, though he wondered what the consequences would be. "I am planning to resign my position here within the next few months. The king is well aware of this, and so is Catelyn. Afterward, I will be returning to Winterfell. I want your children to accompany me." She stared at him, her mouth agape. "Truly, but for how long? Will you take all of them?" "I will take them all if they are all willing, and I doubt that Jon will be able to leave the king's service for longer than a year if he chooses to go. But," she placed a hand upon her chest, looking panicked, "you'll take them all from me." His eyes narrowed in confusion. "I thought that you wanted me to spend time with them, to take them to Winterfell. I did, but to take them all, I'll be all alone." Sympathetic, he softened his expression. "I am not demanding their departure, only asking that they come north and see their father's home." "Do they know yet? Did your wife approve?" "No, you are the first person I have told." Her countenance darkened. "And will she allow your children north? Will she allow them to be welcomed in your home?" His expression hard, he could think of only one answer. "Catelyn will not be thrilled with my wishes, but she will allow it." Ashara stood, angry and disgusted. "Of course she will, Ned. It's not like you are giving her an option. What would you have me do? First she had wanted him to take the children, and now she was angry that he wanted them to come to Winterfell. She threw up her hands, which attracted the gaze of the children. I don't know, Ned. I don't know what I want or expect from you. Tell the children that you want them to join you in the north. Ask the king for Jon's leave to join you. I don't care anymore, Ned. It seems that you will do as you will, no matter what anyone else desires. With that, she turned and left the courtyard. The children looked to him with questioning expressions. He would tell Ashara's children next, and hoped that their reactions would be better. In the evening, he would tell Catelyn, which he expected to go even worse than his meeting with Ashara. In the evening, Catelyn sat in the hand solar, writing letters after dinner. Ned joined her shortly after she arrived. He had been quietly brooding during their meal, and they had not yet had time to speak on whatever matter was bothering him. His bastards had not appeared in the tower that day, having spent much of it out of doors with Catelyn's own children. She was growing used to their appearing in the tower, and they had been courteous enough to never be seen by her. She watched as Ned settled himself into the large chair behind the hand's desk. He seemed far wearier than she had seen him in some time. You spoke with Lady Ashara for quite some time today, she began, her voice inquiring. To her and to the children. I have been thinking for quite some time about the future. We will leave in a few months, after the wedding and coronation. You have said as much before. She considered him with some trepidation. I would like for Lady Ashara's children to accompany us to Winterfell and to remain there for a year. Catelyn felt gutted, though she couldn't say that she was surprised. She breathed deeply, knowing that she had only one reply to give. Her voice was toneless as she spoke. As you will, my lord. Cat, his voice and eyes were pleading with her. She closed her eyes and shook her head. I am your wife, and most days I do love you. I am glad that you honored me by never bringing your bastards to Winterfell. I respect that you want to know them. Ned, that makes you a good man, a good father, but when I see them, when I think of them, all that I see is your betrayal. I was raised to expect my husband to have bastards when he was away at war. She stood, pacing. When you told me of your firstborn, I understood. I was betrothed to Brandon when she was conceived. That you managed to have 2 other bastards with that woman during the war, and still marry me. She was shaking, her emotions raw. I felt a pawn in the matter, but I had known that from the start. You needed my father's allegiance to the war. I thought that you would send for her, keep her as a mistress, but you didn't. I felt safe with Robb and Sansa, 2 healthy heirs. I felt sure that you would stay loyal to me, that whatever had transpired between you and Ashara Dayne was in the past. Then you left when I was nearly determined with Arya to fight a war for Robert Baratheon. You told me nothing of visiting Starfall when you returned home. And soon I was with child again. I loved you then, until I found those letters about a child who had been born, whose paternity was questionable, a boy who was only 7 months older than Bran. She turned to face him, cold with fury. Can you imagine how that felt? Can you imagine how it feels to be betrayed by someone you love? To know that while I nursed our daughter, you traveled all the way to Dorne and took your lover to bed? That you hid that secret from me and only told me because I had discovered the truth? That I still lie awake at night wondering how many secrets you have kept from me, how many lies you have told? His eyes fell from her to the table. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Only one lie. One, she snapped. Only one. His eyes were distant, as far away as Winterfell. I cannot speak it, but I can write it, he said, eventually. She sighed. If that is your wish. He picked up a parchment, spreading it out before him, then he picked up a quill and dipped it into the inkwell. He wrote slowly, etching out the words with pain while she paced the room. When he finished, he turned the paper toward her. She sat to read it. My dearest cat, I do not deserve your love. I never have. If you refuse me from this day forth, it will scarcely be undeserved. Lies of omission I have discovered are easier to tell than any other. In seeking to avoid hurting you, I have only hurt you more. No apologies or words will ever amend the wrongs I have committed against you. There is only one lie for me to confess, and after I have done so, it still must remain a secret. When Robert's rebellion was at an end, I came to a tower in the Dornish marches where my sister Lyanna was held. Arthur Dayne was one of her guards, and I slew him in combat. I found Lyanna in the tower, dying. As she died, she made me swear a promise, which I have failed time and again to fulfill. That promise was to protect her son, Jon. We traveled to Starfall afterward, so that I might return Dawn to its rightful place. It was then and there that I learned I had a daughter, and where Ashara agreed to claim Jon as her own. For his safety, for the sake of Sir Arthur, she agreed to keep him. To my shame, my son Arthur is a result of that stay at Starfall. I should have told you so many times that he is my nephew, but I couldn't. I worried for your safety if Robert ever learned the truth. I felt it easier to ignore the unpleasant truths than to ever speak them aloud. I spoke with Ashara today of a lie for the boy. Should anyone question the time of his birth, we have agreed to claim that he is older than he is, and that he is the son of my brother Brandon with another woman. The lie is imperfect, but it is also impossible for anyone to disprove. If we should talk on these matters, it must be where no ears may overhear. I do not trust speaking these secrets within the wall of these buildings. When she finished reading, angry tears upon her cheeks, she stood and threw the parchment into the fireplace, where it melted into flame and ash. Speechless and hollow, she left the room. She walked to her bedchamber and barred the door behind her. Arya Stark walked to the outer courtyard behind her parents, Robb and Sansa. There they joined the masses of nobles and courtiers who were traveling to the Sept of Baelor for the wedding of King Renly Baratheon to Princess Arianne Martell. Some were riding to the Sept while others were traveling in carriages and litters, still others were walking, though they had already departed. Arya wanted to ride. Instead, she entered the litter with her mother and sister, while her father and brother rode. The curtains of the litter were open as they made their way from the Red Keep toward the city. Arya was glad of the breeze and that her dress was still one of the Dornish gowns she had been given in Dorne. The heat of the day was suffocating, and the thin blue gown was wonderfully relieving. Sansa's gown was also one of her Dornish dresses, yellow and bright like the sun, patterned with green and purple threads. Gerziardia, Sansa, Robb, and their half-siblings all wore silver pendants, which their father had given them. He had given them all silver wools and steel daggers. The daggers bore two emblems, a wolf and a trout, for his true-born children, and a wolf and a star for his bastards. The eyes of the pendants were amethysts for the bastards and sapphires for the true-born children. Arya loved her gifts and knew that her brothers and sisters loved them all as well. Mother wore her green gown again, with a white corset, a gold belt, and gold necklaces. She was also sad, as she had been for a few weeks. Arya wondered what was wrong between her parents. They seldom ever fought, and even when they had all was usually quickly amended. Now, nothing seemed to make them happy. She wondered if Lady Ashara was to blame, but Axlis and her brothers seemed to think their mother was also not getting along with father. Was it because father had promised Lady Ashara's children that they could come to Winterfell? Sansa chattered happily along the way about the wedding and the feast that was to follow. Arya and other children of the court would only be attending the feast for the few hours, long enough to eat and see some of the entertainment, but miss all of the dancing and whatever else adults did at feast. Sansa, Raed, Alysanne, Arthur, Edric, and Jon would all attend the entire affair. Lucas would leave when Arya left. Arya was glad that she would have him as a companion for the rest of the evening instead of being alone. She was also happy that Jaengfol wasn't attending the feast at all. When they arrived, they were escorted into the large septry and positioned near the front of the masses of attendees. The septry was beautiful. The colored glass of the windows showered rainbows of light upon everyone in the room. When everyone was settled into their positions, the king and his guards stepped to the front of the room, onto the platform at the front. The High Septon stood with them, prepared to perform the ceremony. A hush fell upon the crowd as Princess Arianne Martell entered the room. The jewels she wore glittered as she moved. Her burnt orange gown caressed the floor as she walked. Her entire bodice was covered in an intricate web of gold and jewels, winding their way to her neck. Upon her back, she wore her silk maiden's cloak bearing the pierced son of House Martell. The princess smiled beautifully, awing the crowd. There was no hesitation or fear in her steps, only confident duty. She was given to King Renly by her brother, Prince Quentyn. She and the king smiled at one another as they said their vows, but Arya didn't think they loved one another. Jon and Tyenn had been practically glowing as they wed. Did her parents smile as they married? Would Arya marry someone who could truly make her smile? The ceremony progressed slowly. Jon's had felt faster for some reason. They said the 7 vows, invoked the 7 blessings, and exchanged the 7 promises. Afterward, the wedding song was sung and the challenge given and unanswered. Quentyn then removed his sister's maiden's cloak. Rotely accepted the new cloak from Jon, who stood beside him. He tenderly placed the cloak bearing the crowned stag of House Baratheon upon her shoulders, clasping it. They pledged their love and kissed to cheers. The ceremony done, they departed from the Septon Bank, followed by the crowds. Every guest formed a long queue to leave the sept, kissing the hand of the king and his new wife as they parted. Ruggiero was glad when they made it back into their litter. The crowds had been suffocating within the sepulchre. She had taken to playing with the silver pendant in her boredom throughout the ceremony. Lady Catelyn Stark sipped her wine as the first dance of the evening was performed. All of the women of Dorne stepped into the center of the room, forming a circle around Arianne Martell. Sansa joined them, having learned the dance over the course of the preceding weeks. Catelyn could scarcely refuse her daughter's request to learn a dance to celebrate the wedding of the king to his queen, and so she had willingly allowed her daughter to learn the Dornish dances. The women formed two circles, winding between one another. As they twirled on the floor, the Dornish men approached the circle. Each of them were pulled, one by one, into the dance. The king stood outside the circle, each of the dancers refusing him entry, laughing. It was a game, Catelyn realized. The dancers were keeping the newlyweds apart. At times, the women would allow one of the men into the circle to dance with Arianne, but after a few turns, she would push each of them back to the women, who would in turn push the man out of the dancing circles. Slowly, more men joined the dance. Catelyn laughed as she watched the dance, and so did most of the other onlookers. She turned to her brother, who was seated beside her. "You should join the dancers. I have no idea how to do this dance. I don't think that most of the men outside of Dorne do either, still they have joined. I think that it's a game. The king's goal is to reach the center, and the other dancers are trying to keep him out of the circle." She gave him a wry smile. "Besides which, you should spend the evening seeing if any of the women here catches your eye. Our father's health is failing, and you will soon enough be Lord of Riverrun, and in need of a wife. There are 1,000 guests here, and well over 100 eligible women." He rolled his eyes. "I don't need lecture on my duties." "Don't you? At your age I was already wed, and a mother." He brooded over his goblet, sipping it slowly. "Fine. I'll go search for a bride if that will make you happy." She laid a gentle hand upon his forearm. "What will make me happy is for you to find happiness in another." He lowered his voice, glaring at Ned, who was seated to the other side of her. "As you have?" She returned his glare. "Leave it alone." He drained his goblet and stood. "As you wish, Cat." He walked from the table and joined the dancers. She clasped her hands together beneath the table. She needed to speak with Ned, but every time she looked at him, cold fury bubbled up within her. How could he have lied to her for so many years? Lied to her, and yet she could see Ashara Dayne amidst the dancers, and hated how angry that woman's presence made her. Ned had trusted this woman with his bastard nephew and lied to her for well over a decade. She forced herself to watch Sansa. Her daughter was happy, laughing and twirling with the other dancers. She noticed that Axley Sansand was near Sansa. Catelyn had yet to pay much attention to any of Ned's bastards. Both she and they had chosen to avoid one another as much as possible. Young Alysanne looked a bit like Ned, though she favored her mother. She wore the wolf pendant which Ned had given her, as all of Ned's children had that day. Whatever else Catelyn might think of Ned, she knew that he loved his children, and they all seemed to love him as well. Rosalie Baratheon had finally been allowed into the circle of dancers when Prince Oberyn Martell appeared in front of their table. He stood to the side so that he didn't obscure their view of the dancers. "Are you enjoying the dance, Lord and Lady Stark?" "It's entertaining," said Ned. Catelyn laughed. "It's quite clever, though I do admit that I don't fully understand the dance." Oberyn grinned. "It's a game, an ancient one from the Rhone. Arianne is in the place of the mother goddess, the women are her water spirits. They bring men to her, seeking to find one worthy to be her consort, that they might bring forth the spring floods and new life. She rejects them until her true love arrives, and she keeps him. But he must learn how to navigate his way to her, or the water spirits will prevent his entry." Galen raised a brow. "An ancient Rhinish marriage game, about the faith of the Rhinar, played by those wed under the light of the Seven." He laughed. "I promise not to tell the High Septon." Catelyn and Ned both smiled at his comments, and they continued to watch the dance. A few moments later, Arianne seemed startled by her companion in the dance. and she spun with him for longer than she had with the other dancers. Oberyn tensed watching them, and Catelyn wondered why. The man was young, handsome, with sandy brown hair and dimples on his cheeks. The Dornish prince still seemed tense when the young man left the queen's arms and moved back through the circles of dancers. Catelyn looked at Oberyn, curious. "Does that young man trouble you, Prince Oberyn?" Oberyn's smile was harsh. "He is one of my squires, Ser Daemon Sand, of God's grace, and I feel that he needs reminded of his position. If you will excuse me." He bowed them swiftly before he stalked into the crowds. At last, the king found his way to his queen, and they spun in the circle. The women broke apart, each of them reaching for a partner amongst the men who had been rejected from the circle. The music slowly came to a crescendo and then reached its conclusion. The dancers all bowed to one another, and then arranged themselves for the next dance as the music began again. Ned looked to her, Cat. She considered him neutrally, the wine and merriment of the evening making her charitable. "Yes, Ned? Would you like to dance?" He held a hand to her, a gesture of peace. His seemingly neutral expression belied the pleading of his eyes. She pressed her lips together, still angry with him, but she also missed him. She also knew that it would look better in the eyes of the guests if they danced together. She placed her hand in his. "I will gladly dance with you, my lord." The dancers arranged themselves in rows, men on one side and women on the other. As the dance progressed, the men would move down the line and upon reaching the end of the line, walk to the start. The dance would end when everyone was back to their original partner, at least in theory, as pairs at times were known to leave the lines during the dance. Catelyn began the dance with Ned. His soft smiles as they danced encouraged her to smile. They switched partners after a few moments, not speaking a word to one another. The swirl of partners was at times dizzying. She felt as though she danced with all the 7 kingdoms as the line passed. Eventually she found herself partnered with Pater Baelish, her childhood friend and the man who had spread unseemly rumors about her throughout the Red Keep. Some years passed. "Cat," he greeted, "you look lovely as ever." She favored him with a warm smile. "Thank you, Pater. I've heard rumors that you will be returning to Winterfell soon." "Soon enough," she replied. "I have been away from my youngest children for far too long." "Have you solved the mystery of the assassin who was sent after your son?" "No, it seems that we may never know who performed such a fell deed." She misliked his expression as he offered her his sympathy. Something about his smirking lips caused her skin to crawl. A moment later, the music changed, and he moved to the next partner. Further down the line of dancers, Ashara Dayne began the dance with Ned Stark. She felt as though 100 pairs of eyes bore down upon her as his hands met hers. She smiled at him. Her initial anger at his desire to take her children to Winterfell had subsided. She knew that she should be glad that he wanted to spend time with the children, but she would miss their company. She had never been parted from all of her children for any length of time. "They look at us," she stated simply. "You would think they would tire of gaping at us." She laughed as he spun her. "Oh, why ever would they do that?" She paused, smiling at him. "Do you remember the first time we danced?" He gave her a small smile. "At Harrenhal, to a similar dance." She laughed again. Fewer whispered then. They had less reason to. They spun once more before the partners switched. Rosier Sand laughed throughout most of the dances. She flirted with some of her partners, and with others she simply smiled. She couldn't recall ever having so much fun before in her life. The wedding had been beautiful, the feast had been extravagant, and the dances were delightful. She released the hands of a knight of the Reach, and joined her hands to a man with red hair and strikingly blue eyes. She giggled in surprise, realizing that it was Edmure Tully who held her hands. "My lady, you are lovely," he said in greeting. "I am Edmure Tully." "Alicien," she replied, "I thank you for the compliment. My words were not in vain, I assure you. I have never seen violet eyes before. They are quite remarkable." She wanted to roll her pretty eyes with how many comments she had received upon that one trait. "Why, that you, Lord Yadmir. I share the trait with my mother, the Lady Ashara Dayne." His countenance changed remarkably at her words. His pretty smile evaporated, and he became a paragon of stoic virtue. "A pleasure to meet you, Mistress Axian," he said in neutral tones. "And you, Lord Admir," she replied, bending to him politely as he moved from her. She danced with 3 more partners before she was paired with a tall, dark-haired young man whose face seemed to permanently smirk. "I believe I have seen you before," he said in greeting. "Have you?" I must say that it is entirely possible I have been here for weeks. I'm Theon Greyjoy. Actually, she favored him with a smile as he spun her. Would you care to have a drink with me, Alice? It couldn't hurt to have a drink with the heir to the Iron Islands, and she was truly in need of something to drink. Why not? His smile broadened and walked with her from the line before she could be passed to a new partner. He took her gently by the arm and led her away from the dancers to the lines of servers who passed them goblets of wine. Though it wasn't ladylike, she drained the glass in a few swallows and had one of the servants refill her goblet from the carafe he held. Then they walked to the perimeter of the room, away from the crowds. You are a talented dancer, he told her kindly. I've been learning to dance since I could walk, especially the wedding dance. And darn, even the children join in the celebration. I must admit, I've never seen a dance like that before. She laughed. Perhaps it will gain popularity in the rest of Westeros, now that it has been danced at the wedding of the king. He grinned at her. Maybe it will. I have heard so many tales of Dorne, but none from a Dornish woman. What is it like? Dorne? She giggled, thinking his question strange. It's my home. She closed her eyes and sighed. Some places in the south, along the coast, you can watch the sun rise and set over the seas. The days are hot, though not like here. The air is thick here, and it sticks to your skin. There the air is dry. At night the air is cold, enough to chill you. If you ever visit Dorne, you should visit the water gardens. They're beautiful. He drew closer to her, moving his hand from her arm to the small of her back. As beautiful as you? She rolled her eyes before titling her head so that she might look at him. More so, I think. Surely that cannot be. Beauties such as you are rare. She smiled sweetly at him, though his flatteries were far from the first she had heard that day. Thank you. He continued to walk with her, flattering her and flirting with her. She willingly flirted back, though she found him to be rather tiresome. He was leading her to a more secluded corner of the room when a voice stopped them in their tracks. Leave her alone, Greyjoy, a voice growled behind them. Yaddis and Theon turned to see Robb standing there, his face set like stone. What's it to you, Stark? You know how Dornish girls are. She pulled away from him, furious. How Dornish girls are. What's that supposed to mean? Who cares what he meant, Robb spat. He turned from Assis to Theon. She isn't yours to touch. His smirk was condescending. Why is she yours? Robb's voice was utterly cold as he replied. She's my sister. Theon stepped back and looked between them, confused. Sister? Alysanne Sand, she said. Lord Stark's bastard daughter. He blanched, finally seeing that she and Robb wore matching pendants. He bobbed his head to her while he mumbled his pardons and darted away. Alice looked to Robb, a brow raised. You didn't have to come to my defense. He smiled lightly at her. You're my sister. I have a duty to protect you, especially from Theon. She considered her half-brother and the retreating form of Theon Greyjoy for a few moments. He was raised at Winterfell with you, correct? Yes, which is why I know to keep him away from you. He wouldn't have gotten anything from me. I merely wanted a break from dancing, and he provided a distraction. He would have tried to get more from you. More than what? Playful banter and friendly smiles are all he would have gotten. I'm sorry. What? Do you assume that all Dornish girls are promiscuous? Dorne may have a higher view of bastards and fewer qualms about taking lovers, but we are hardly all lewd. Most noble women are just as virtuous in Dorne as they are in the rest of the Seven Kingdoms. She shook her head, annoyed. I've never even kissed. Abashed, he hung his head. I am sorry, truly. It's easy to presume many things about a people without knowing the truth. She raised a brow, still agitated. What did you presume about me? Nothing about you, just about Dorne. Stories of your regent's temperaments towards many things may have been exaggerated by the time they reached my ears or Theon's. She considered him circumspectly. I suppose that you are forgiven then. You don't sound entirely convinced of my explanation. I'm not, but I don't believe that you meant any harm. You did gallantly rescue me from Theon Greyjoy. He grinned. I'll be here whenever you need me. Yes, though it would appear that my full brothers are not as attentive as you. She looked out across the vast, cavernous hall of the throne room, and found that she couldn't see either of her brothers in the crowds. She did manage to see Sansa dancing with Sarah Garland Tyrell, though I don't blame them. There are so many people here, so many things to do and see. Are you enjoying the night? I am, though father reminded me continually of how important this day is for our prestige. You too? Both father and my mother kept reminding me that this is a good time for me to present myself before the lords of the land so that they might make offers for my hand. Sansa was told the same. Was Arya? Robb burst out laughing. No, she would have behaved abominably if she was told. Alos laughed with him. Oh, can you even imagine? She'd attempt to ruin any chance she has at a match. Well, she is only 10. At worst, she would be seen as a troublesome girl. Very true, he sighed, looking out across the crowds with her. Life is so strange. Indeed, a year ago, our father was on his way here to serve as Hand of the King to Robert Baratheon, and we had never met. Now we're guests at the wedding of our new king and queen. Our country has seen a small war, and Jon is married. Though the circumstances were grim, I'm glad that it led to our meeting. It's nice to finally know my half-sister and half-brothers. I know that Sansa and Arya feel the same. I feel the same as well. I'm happy that father invited us to Winterfell. It will be nice to see your home. Perhaps one day you will come to Starfall. It's beautiful. I would like that, he replied, seeming pleased with the idea. They found an abandoned bench and sat together, watching the dancers. When the partner-switching dance came to an end, a slower dance began. The men and women formed pairs throughout the room, pressing their palms together as they moved their feet to the dance. Alysanne noticed quite a curious sight as her eyes scanned the crowds. Two very tall individuals were dancing with one another. She recognized the woman as Lady Brienne of Tarth, one of the king's personal guard, and the woman who had saved Jon's life in the war. Brienne had trained with the female fighters from Dorne in the north more than once. She knew the man was northern, but she didn't know who he was. Do you know the man who is dancing with Lady Brienne? She motioned to the pair, when Robb seemed confused. Smaljin Umber, he's the heir of Last Hearth. They watched the pair with fascination. Both Brienne and Jon were smiling as they danced, genuine interest showing in both of their expressions. I think they like one another. The heir of Last Hearth whispered in the ear of the heiress of Tarth, causing a blush to spread from her cheeks to her ears even as she smiled at him. I am inclined to agree with you, she grinned at Robb. It would seem that northern and southern relations are improving markedly of late. He burst out laughing. When he quieted, his reply was more serious. I've heard that there have been some fights between some men from the Reach and from Dorne. She shrugged dismissively. We've been fighting one another for over 1,000 years. Starfall and Old Town have sacked one another hundreds of times, though not since Dorne joined the Seven Kingdoms. You may as well ask for peace between the Blackwoods and Brackens as ask for peace between the border lords of the Reach, Stormlands, and Dorne. How does that bode for the impending marriage of Lady Margaery Tyrell to Prince Quentyn Martell? She will be welcomed as our lady, though I am certain that some will make her transition difficult. When she births young princes and princesses, she will be loved well enough. I suppose that you are right. They watched the various pairs again, spotting friends and family amongst the dancers. Does it bother you that I stopped Theon from talking to you? She laughed. No, I was growing tired of him. Oberyn tells me that I am much like my mother, smiling and flirting with men, but never giving them anything. She gasped, putting a hand to her mouth as he looked at her with surprise. I'm so sorry. I forgot who I am. She cringed as she let out a short, awkward laugh. Yes, actually. I just feel comfortable with you and Sansa and Arya. I'm not offended, and I am glad that you feel comfortable with us. I feel the same. He grinned at her, which she returned. I just hope that everything becomes less awkward with time. I hope so, as well. A few moments later, he stood and held out his hand to her. Would you like to dance? She put her hand in his. I would love to. Aelys and Robb joined the many pairs of dancers in the center of the room. As they moved, Aelys spied everyone she knew, except for her brother Arthur. She searched the room for him, but realized that her brother was nowhere to be seen. Arthur Sand escaped from the feast shortly after the wedding dance was finished. He felt trapped with so many people in that room. In the warm evening air, he felt more at ease. He was halfway across the outer courtyard when he heard a familiar voice calling his name. He stopped and turned to see Bella walking toward him from the castle kitchens. What were you doing over here? She smiled as she reached him, and they resumed their walk to the maiden vault, celebrating the wedding of the king with all the other servants. When the courses of the meal finished amongst the nobles, the servants of the castle were allowed to eat. The food was wonderful: duck, lamb, tuna, Dornish food which burned the tongue. He laughed. I'm glad that you were able to share in the feast. It was nice, though. I am glad to return to my nook for the evening. Your nook, he frowned. Why don't you stay with me again? You haven't slept beside me often since my mother arrived. Your mother can remove me from the household, and she worries over the image put forth by her family. My mother has 4 bastards. The family already has a certain image. She pursed her lips, troubled. You dislike your mother for having bastards? No! He nearly shouted the word. So swift was his reply. I only wish to be treated with equity. My brother took Tanya as a lover, and no one said a word. I brought you into the household to protect you, and suddenly I am being told what I can and cannot do. She cocked her head as she looked at him. Her voice was playful as she spoke. What would you like to do? He felt his neck flush, burning red. I don't rightly know, but I do know that I want to be treated the same as my brothers and sister. Mistress Axley Sand seems to be quite the virtuous young woman, so I dare say you are treated as she is. He rolled his eyes. Of course. Alice is virtuous. She wants to fall in love and marry for love. She's nearly 10 and 7, and she still hasn't kissed anyone. Do you scorn her choice, or doubt that true love is real? He shook his head. No, but our mother wanted to marry for love, and look where she is. 4 bastards. And chief lady in waiting to the Queen of Westeros, Bella rebutted. Can't complain much there. She should have had more. Jon was lucky. He got to marry the girl he loves, but I will be forced to marry an incest-bred bastard whom I haven't even met. You should be glad that your father has seen fit to choose a spouse for you. Some bastards have nothing. Or they're like me and are born to a whore. What if I would rather have you? He blurted out the question before he could think. She looked at him, at once both happy and melancholy. They stopped, and she ran gentle fingers through his hair. You can't marry me. He rested his hands upon her shoulders, tenderly caressing her. I know, but I also cannot wed the Lannister bastard for years either. She's only 9, until then, and maybe after. Why can't I love you? His heart dropped, suddenly unsure. Unless you don't feel anything for me. She considered him, mixed emotions playing on her face. She took far longer to reply than he found comfortable. I care for you, Arthur. But I've never been cared for by a man before. I've had dozens of men touch me, but none of them in love or kindness. I don't know what I want or feel. My body has never been my own to give, nor my heart. I hadn't thought about that. She smiled sweetly. I didn't think you would. You have a good heart, Arthur, and I know that you care for me. But I must also consider my position and safety. Should your affections wane, I will have nothing. Less than I had at the start, and worse should my care for you deepen. What if I give you my winnings from the Tournament of the Hand? I've scarcely spent any of it. It could be yours. I can even have it written as a contract, witnessed by my mother and uncle and whomever else you'd wish. That way you would have safety, money which is yours and yours alone to go with you if ever you leave. I will never send you away. But should you wish to leave at any time, you would be free to go anywhere you desired. She stared at him for a long time, both startled and contemplating. There would be no expectation or obligation attached to this gift. None. You helped save my brother's life, and you've helped me through everything I saw in that battle. I want you to feel safe, to be safe. Bereft of words, tears began to flow down her cheeks. She laid her head upon his chest, and he wrapped his arms around her. When she pulled away again, she smoothed her hair and wiped away her tears. I can never repay you for the kindness you show me. You don't owe me or anyone else anything just because we are nice to you. All you owe anyone when they are kind is a thank you. She laughed, overwhelmed. Thank you then, Arthur, for everything. She reached for his hand and held it. But you've told me that you care for me and that you want me. I must admit, I would like to know what it is like to be shown affection by a man who truly cares. His cheeks burning again, Arthur swallowed the lump in his throat. He felt frozen, wanting to touch her, to kiss her, but unable to do anything now that she agreed. However, she was more adept at handling the situation. She drew near to him and pressed her lips against his own. He had kissed before 2 different serving girls in Dorne, but while he had enjoyed kissing them, kissing Bella made him feel alive. Finally, he unfroze, his arms wrapping around her as their kiss deepened. When finally they separated, panting for air, he smiled. She too smiled at him, causing lovely dimples to show on her cheeks. He took her by the hand, and they walked toward the maiden vault, excited and nervous about everything regarding Bella. As they walked, he noticed a tall, slender girl, both for the same building. Alicent, he realized, though he did not know what made her run away so swiftly. As they reached the doors of the building, Arthur could still hear the sound of music, echoing across the castle courtyards. Desiring to escape the crowds and heat of the wedding feast, Catelyn Stark made her way to the balconies which were adjacent to the upper galleries of the throne room. Each of the balconies had collected guests who desired to remain at the feast, but escape from it as well. She passed by several crowded balconies before she found one containing a solitary woman seated upon a stone bench, facing toward the city. Her black hair was pinned up with sapphires and amethysts. "May I join?" Catelyn's words died on her lips as the woman turned to her, looking up with violet eyes. "You may share the evening air if you wish, Lady Stark," Ashara Dayne said, "though I dare say you would rather not speak with me." "Indeed," Catelyn replied. "Or we could talk. What would we have to talk about?" A brow raised, Ashara considered Catelyn shrewdly. "Lord Stark plans for my children to accompany you to Winterfell. I find that a matter to discuss, don't you?" Catelyn rested her back against the archway. "What would you like to discuss about my husband's intentions to bring your children north?" "You don't want them there." Ashara stood and walked to the balcony's balustrade, resting her hip against it. "Of course I don't want them there. I rather prefer to not see visible proof of my husband's infidelities." Ashara laughed darkly. "Does it really bother you so much that he came back to my bed a decade ago? Many women would call that a bargain. He brought home no northern bastards for you, and from all reports took no other lovers. Meanwhile, I am unmarriageable because he left me with 4 little ones, and he sits in Winterfell with you and your 5 children, ignoring his children in Dorne until he finally grew a conscience about them. I know women who would call you lucky, our former queen included." "Lucky?" Catelyn regarded her with contempt. "To know that my husband lied to me and betrayed me over and again regarding you. To know that he entrusted you with secrets he only now sees fit to tell me." Ashara blanched, seeming to realize what she meant. She stumbled over her response. He only just told you about." Catelyn took a few steps forward, her voice low. "Secrets regarding some of your children. Yes?" "Incredulous," Ashara began laughing. "I thought he would have told you ages ago." "But no, of course he wouldn't. Why tell the truth when he can avoid the matter altogether? No wonder everyone has whispered of a rift between you and Ned." Catelyn stiffened at Ashara, referring to her husband as Ned. "The rifts between my husband and I are no concern of yours, though they have certainly been caused by you." "By me?" She took a step back, amused and aggravated. "Need I remind you that he wanted to marry me? That when he and I promised one another that we would wed you, were betrothed to Brandon Stark? That I did not compel him to come to Dorne during the Greyjoy Rebellion? That I never once had to coax him into my bed, but he came willingly?" She shook her head, a rueful smile on her lips. "Yet he never asked me to join him in Winterfell. He never took me for a mistress, and he never asked for the children to come see him until now. Selfish, blind fool that you are, he chose you. He chose to never allow his affection for me to supplant you in your place. He chose to never allow his children with me to visit him, and still you begrudge my children a place in his life." Catelyn stared at her, her fists clenched. The gall of this woman to speak this way to her, and yet everything that Ashara Dayne had said was true. Ned had chosen her. He had chosen to keep Ashara and her children far from Winterfell, and he had never taken another lover. It did not ease the pain she felt by Ned's lies or betrayals, but she knew that if she weren't careful, she could easily push Ned back into Ashara's arms. Her hands relaxed, and she clasped them in front of her. "I will not begrudge your children any time with their father. They are welcome at Winterfell as guests for however long Lord Stark wishes them to be there. May it allow our children continue to grow their love and affection toward one another. If you will excuse me." Startled, Ashara inclined her head. "As you will." Catelyn walked from the balcony and looked out across the throne room where the revelers danced and the minstrels sang. She needed to find Ned. Eventually, she spied him in the crowd, speaking with Sansa. She walked swiftly from the gallery to the main floor and then to her husband and eldest daughter. Sansa smiled as soon as she saw Catelyn. "Mother, the feast has been wonderful." Catelyn gently cradled her daughter's chin with one hand, somewhat concerned by how flushed her cheeks were. The heat of the room and the hours of dancing were likely to leave the girl exhausted on the morrow. "I'm glad that you are enjoying the evening. However, I do think that it may be time for you to retire to your room. Find Robb and have him escort you back to the Tower of the Hand. She pouted. Oh, mother, must I? Yes, Ned replied. You must do as your mother says. She still frowned, but she didn't protest. I shall retire then. She curtsied politely to them both. Mother, father? Cersei searched the room for Robb, who she spied across the room, speaking with Lady Margaery, Tyrell, and several other young women. She walked straight to him. Catelyn and Ned watched, amused, as their daughter's appearance before their son caused his grin to drop. Catelyn covered her mouth to stifle her laughter as she watched her children. Beside her, Ned did much the same. Robb was clearly struggling to not seem annoyed by his younger sister. Eventually, Cersei motioned toward Catelyn and Ned, who both dropped their hands so that their children wouldn't see their amusement. Robb looked to them, pleading with his eyes, but was met with a shake of the head from both of his parents. Defeated, Robb excused himself from his admirers and took Cersei by the arm, leading her from the room. Catelyn turned to Ned, suppressing her laughter. Our poor children, you would think we ruined the entire day for them. Ned grinned at her. They will forgive us, even if Robb loses some admirers. He looked to her, his smile evaporating as he searched her face. Can all be forgiven between us? Breathing deeply, she knew that she had to move past the lies and hurt. I want us to talk, Ned, about everything. I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you or not, but I want us to move forward together. We can't afford to face whatever trials the future will bring if we don't face them together. He took hold of her hand and pressed it to his lips. As soon as we can speak openly, I will tell you everything. His lip crooked into a gentle smile. For as long as I draw breath, I will work for your forgiveness. You don't. Bad them, more than one voice shouted out, cutting off any words which Catelyn would have said. There were soon a chorus of voices shouting for the bedding of the king and his new bride. A crowd formed around Renly Baratheon and Arianne Martell, men and women pulling at their clothes and carrying them from the room. Ned and Catelyn watched, each of them smiling as the young leaders of Westeros were taken to their marriage bed. They seem happy, she said. They do. I hope that they can remain happy, for the sake of the future. She looked to Ned, remembering her own, very dutiful, bedding. But duty had become more. It had grown into love. You don't have to work for my forgiveness, Ned. She placed a hand on his cheek, her fingers threading through the coarse hairs of his beard. But it will be a very long time before I can trust you again. He placed a hand upon the one on his cheek and pulled her hand gently away, pressing a kiss to her palm. You are more than I deserve. She favored him with a small smile. I shall remember to remind you of that sentiment when it seems that you have forgotten. I'm certain that you will. Shall we retire for the evening? I like that idea. He took her by the arm and walked with her from the room, joining the crowds who were also wandering from the room. From the corner of her eye, Catelyn saw Lady Ashara standing in the gallery, watching. She had no words for what she felt about Ashara. She had no regard for the woman. But if it were not for the angry words which they had exchanged, Catelyn would still be avoiding Ned. The door to the royal bedchamber was shut behind the very naked king of Westeros and his equally naked bride. Alysanne Sand trailed away from the door with other revelers as they all made their way back to their rooms for the evening. She had loved every moment of the day, from the wedding to the feast to the dances to the bedding. Someday she hoped that she would have a wedding of her own to enjoy. Watching her brother's wedding, and now Arianne's, and very soon Prince Quentyn's, she couldn't help but contemplate her own eventual wedding. She knew that it wouldn't be as grand as the king and queen's, but it would be sweet to celebrate with her family, her whole family. Along the way to her room, she found Sir Daemon Sand a date. They walked together through the halls, toward the section of the castle where they were housed. He offered her wine from the goblet he still held, but she refused. If I drink any more wine, I think I shall be sick. He laughed. Fair enough. He watched her swaying as they walked. Drunk? Sober enough to have my wits about me, but yes, I'm drunk. He finished the goblet and tossed it casually onto the flagstone floor. I'm not nearly drunk enough. He glanced back, in the direction of the chamber which held Arianne and Renly. She's not yours, Daemon. I know, he spat. You aren't the only one to remind me of that. Hey, she laid a hand on his forearm, gentle and comforting. I'm not here to scold you. I know what happened between the two of you. I can't imagine. He pulled away, unhappy. His voice was firm, but not unkind. I don't need your sympathy either. She turned, glaring at him. Fine, you don't want my sympathy, then how about this? We're bastards. You and I have nothing but the kindness of our parents to depend upon. We don't even have their names. Arianne was the heir to Dorne, and she drew you to herself because she is beautiful and charming. But she is the sun, and the sun burns. You don't think I know that? His scornful laugh echoed in the corridor. She was grateful that they were alone. Doran and Oberyn and my father have all said the same to me time and again. But she still encouraged me at times. Hush! She hissed. Do you want them to take your head? He shook his head, still laughing bitterly. No, I want a woman in my arms to help me forget and perhaps talk me out of my choices. She eyed him warily. What choices? He gave her a wan smile. The king is holding a contest in 2 days after the coronation to decide who will fill out his Kingsguard. I know. I will be competing. She gasped. You can't. Why not? Because once upon a time I loved her more than anything in this world. I am one of the best swords in Dorne, and I can protect her. You and I were brought up with story upon story of what happened to Elia Martell. Look me in the eyes and tell me that she won't be safer with me in the Kingsguard. She looked at him, shaking her head. But she knew that Arianne would be safer with Daemon in the Kingsguard. He wouldn't allow any harm to befall her so long as he lived. But if he and Arianne ever forgot their vows, I know that you would die for her. Does anyone else know that you plan to participate? No, I haven't said a word to anyone until now. Will you keep my words a secret? She knew that she shouldn't. She should tell Oberyn in the morning, or her mother, but she also knew that he would keep Arianne safe. I won't tell anyone. But Daemon, if you value her life and yours, you will never touch her again. Do you take me for a fool? At the moment, yes, I do. A gallant fool to be sure, but a fool nonetheless. He smiled at her and stopped walking, leaning against the wall. I said that I wanted a woman to talk me out of my choices, and here you have talked me into them. Now, if only you would be the woman in my arms for the night. She rolled her eyes. No, my virtue happens to matter to me. Plus, my father plans to sell me off to the highest bidder, and you know that the buyers almost never want second-hand goods. She smirked at him, mocking the words she had spoken. He started laughing as she spoke. Most of the buyers wouldn't know the difference. I'm not drunk enough to agree to share a bed with you. He stepped toward her, a hand reaching toward her even as he placed another upon his chest in mock pain. Would you truly need to be drunk to agree? More than drunk, she deadpanned, though she allowed him to take her hand. What about for a kiss? She chewed on her lip contemplatively. Maybe it was the wine, but she was curious enough to kiss him. He was sweet and a friend, and this was far from the first time he had asked. She glanced around the corridor. Not here. He beamed at her. So is that a yes? She giggled. Undecided, but I most certainly won't kiss you here. Your virtue and the need to sell you to the highest bidder. Well then, shall we walk? He took her by the arm, whispering a great number of sordid things in her ear to make her blush. At last they reached the halls near her rooms. They stopped near the door to her family's chambers, and he pulled her close to himself. Shall we go in? And have my brothers kill you? Like your brothers are even going to see, or your uncle, or your aunt, or your cousin. Edric left long before the betting started. Lucas has likely been in bed for hours. Jon and Tywin disappeared during the dances, and are likely in their room. Arthur also disappeared during the dances, likely to spend time with the former whore who is a servant in your household. Ilaria and Beric left together as the betting started, and are also likely in their room. Which leaves your mother, who may or may not be with Oberyn this evening. One can never tell. She opened and closed her mouth, stunned. How did you notice that much about where my family went? I noticed many things, including the fact that if we enter your rooms, no one will see us. She looked up and down the corridor, and saw that they were alone. The idea of kissing him still warmed her body, so she opened the door and walked inside with him, closing it behind them. There were only a few candles lit in the common room, indicating that likely no one was awake, though she could be discovered at any time should one of her family decide to pass through the common room of the suite she shared with her mother and little brother. Still, the thrill of her questionable choices only added to the excitement which welled within her. She walked to the cushioned couch which rested against the wall, and sat. Daemon followed closely behind her, sitting next to her. He pulled her into his arms and gently caressed her neck with one hand. Then he bent his face to her neck and traced the same path with his nose and lips, drawing a gasp from her. She felt him smile as he pressed a kiss to her neck, causing more erratic breaths to escape her lips. She knew, somewhere in her mind, that she should stop him and tell him to leave. But she was too fascinated by the experience to stop him. She wanted to feel his kiss upon her neck, and she wanted to kiss him. She could see little in the dim light beyond his smile when he looked up at her. "May I?" She could manage little but a nod of her head while she looked at him, breathing heavily with her cheeks flushed. He bent to her and pressed his lips against hers. The sensation was strange, lips against lips, and tongues against tongues. But oh, it was exquisite. She kissed him, hungry for something she didn't understand. She wrapped her arms around his neck, running her fingers through his hair. His hands roamed her back, her neck, her sides, and found their way to her breasts, where he touched her so tenderly that she moaned against his lips. Encouraged, he continued the gentle caresses, driving her mad with his touch. She pulled away from his lips, burying her face against his neck and digging her nails into his shoulders. A moment later she found his lips again, dancing with their mouths. One of his hands trailed to her hips, and he shifted so that he laid her upon her back. "Stop," she gasped, willing herself to say what she didn't want. She pressed her hands to his chest. "You have to go." He stilled, but didn't move away. "Please, we have to stop." He pulled away slowly, his chest heaving. "You don't really want me to leave." He wasn't asking a question, rather stating what he knew. She closed her eyes, still breathing heavily. "Please, go." He shifted away, sitting up. He reached for her hands and pulled her upright as well. "For the sake of your virtue, my lady." She stared at him, panting. "Thank you." He grinned at her and pressed a soft kiss to her lips. "For kissing you, it was my pleasure, I assure you. You don't need to thank me." She burst into giggles, nestling her head in the crook of his neck. "I was thanking you for stopping, though kissing you was lovely. I hope that I helped to distract you." "You did, though now I must find a distraction from you." He pulled away and stood, pressing a kiss to the top of her head before he walked away and left her chambers. She sat there, in the silence, feeling the racing of her heart and the fire in her body. She had always told herself that she would never allow Daemon Sand to touch her. Now that she had, she regretted very much that she had waited so long. She could never allow him to touch her again. It had taken all of her willpower to ask him to stop. If he hadn't pulled away, she didn't think that she would have stopped him from doing whatever he wished, nor did she think that she would have entirely minded such a conclusion. She stood and walked to her bedchamber, where she removed her gown, her jewels, her shoes, and her hairpins. She slipped a thin sleeping shift over her head before she crawled into the bed. She was exhausted, but her mind still raced. Belatedly, when her body relaxed and her mind slowed, she realized that she finally understood her parents. She understood wanting something so badly that the consequences no longer seemed consequential. She understood the burning desire for something more, some deep and intangible connection with another soul. Lord Ned Stark watched the slow procession of the king and queen as they entered the throne room. The room had been transformed over the course of the previous day from a feasting hall to its normal state. Every lord and lady in the castle, along with hundreds of courtiers, filled the room, watching the crownless king and queen walk to the foot of the Iron Throne. At the base of the throne, they knelt before the High Septon. He anointed them, blessing them as king and queen of Westeros, swearing them to the protection of the realm. He placed the crown upon Renslaye's head. As one, the crowd shouted, "Long live the king." He placed the crown upon Arianne's head. As one, the crowd shouted, "Long live the queen." They stood, turning to the assembly. "Long live the king. Long live the queen." King Renly Baratheon, the first of his name, walked the steps of the Iron Throne and seated himself, though he had been king for more than half a year. His coronation sealed his place upon the Iron Throne with all the ceremony of kings. When the coronation was finished, the small council convened. This was the first official meeting of the new small council, and the beginning of the transition between Ned's time as Hand of the King and Mace Tyrell's term of service. Ned's official duties would end within a few days of his departure for Winterfell, though that would not happen for near on a month. He was relieved that his time in King's Landing was drawing to a close. He longed for the peace and calm of Winterfell. He awaited the days when he would only have the affairs of the North to manage. Not that he anticipated total calm, not with all of his children being present in Winterfell. He was glad that Cat had grown accustomed to the idea of Ashara's children coming north. He was also glad that he and Cat were speaking once again. He knew that she had yet to truly forgive him, but he was hopeful that their relationship would improve again when they were on their way north. The king and queen both took seats in the small council chamber. A queen taking part in the council was a rarity, but Arianne Martell had demanded the right, and Renly Baratheon had agreed to her position. The rest of the council filled the seats at the table. Ned had never seen or heard of so many serving on the council, though perhaps that was for the best. The new small council contained men from every region of Westeros except for the Westerlands. Retaining their positions were Varys as Master of Whisperers, Lord Baelish as Master of Coin, and Sir Barristan Selmy as Lord Commander of the King's Guard. Newer to their positions were Lord Jon Royce as Master of Laws, Sir Aemon Estermont as Master of Ships, and Grand Maester Gormon. The new Grand Maester was appointed by the Conclave to replace Grand Maester Pegsal, who was still a prisoner in the Red Keep. The king was considering sending the former Grand Maester to the Wall so that he would pose no threat to his rule. Lord Mace Tyrell was present, learning the ins and outs of his new position. Also present were the 5 advisors to the council: Prince Oberyn Martell, Lord Paxter Redwine, Sir Marks Piper, Theon Greyjoy, and Small John Umber. The last addition to the council was Sir Jaxlyn Bywater, who was appointed by Renly to replace James Slate as the commander of the City Watch. The meeting was long and arduous. Many tedious details regarding the changes within the government needed to be managed. The costs associated with the war needed to be counted and paid. The Lannister prisoners needed to be dispersed so that they were not all concentrated within King's Landing. In the end, only Tyrion, Lancel, and Martin Lannister, along with Myrcella, would remain in the Red Keep. The other assorted Lannister hostages would disperse to various keeps of loyal lords until their releases were ordered. The last issue of the day was Lord Stansa Baratheon. Though he had no possible way to win against the unified forces who were sworn to Renly Baratheon, the second son of Lord Stainsavor Baratheon refused to bend to his brother even for the lordship of the Stormlands. The Tyrells would lead the siege of Dragonstone, with the objective of neutralizing the threat of the king's elder brother. Lord Tyrell had a further question to bring up as the discussions dragged on. "What orders does your grace have regarding your niece, the Lady Shireen?" The room fell deathly silent as all eyes fell upon the king. Should any harm befall Shireen, there would be no legitimate heirs of House Baratheon until the queen should birth a child. Ned Stark had never seen the young king look so grim. "Spare her if at all possible," he answered finally, "though I will hold it against none if she perishes." Mace bowed his head in solemn acknowledgement of the king's words. "Should she survive, your grace, will our request be considered." Renly stood, clenching his fists briefly before clasping them behind his back. He looked very much like Robert in that moment, full of wrath and fury. "Your request to wed your eldest son to my niece is denied again. The position of Hand of the King has been granted to you, as a gesture of goodwill for my choosing to wed Arianne over your daughter Margaery. The marriage alliances were agreed upon by myself, you and Prince Doran Martell. When this week ends, your daughter will be married to my wife's brother. Still, you have the gall to ask, yet again for my elder brother's daughter as a bride for your son. Do you think me an utter fool?" Rosierly paced the room, his movements watched by everyone in the chamber. "Let me be very clear, Lord Tyrell, I have no intentions of fostering threats against my rule. Already I am honoring my late brother Robert's desire for his children to be cared for by having Lord Varys track them down and place them in more comfortable positions. Only 2 of his children are acknowledged, and I intend to keep Edric Storm as Robert's only publicly acknowledged bastard. Had my brother been more sensible, he would have left no bastards and several true heirs. As it stands, the crown will pass to my future children with Arianne. Should Shireen survive the assault on Dragonstone, she will become a ward of the crown for me to deal with as I see fit and in my time. Seeking to further your own positions with marriages to the children of my elder brothers could be seen as an act of treason." He looked to them all, smiling briefly. "I owe my crown to you, good men of the realm. While I consider all of you to be honorable and true, I also know that power is a temptation for some. Should I have the misfortune of hearing whispers of treason, and should such unfortunate rumors be proved true, the headsman will be forced to do his duty." Ned Stark murmured his agreement with the rest of the room, but his heart rested uneasily, as it had for many months. He had given Renly Baratheon the crown and the kingdom. He had convinced himself that there had been no other choice, and while that had been true, he still felt the weight of guilt from his choice. Stannis Baratheon and his daughter didn't deserve death for the treason of other men, Ned included. On the 4th day of the festival week, all the people of the Red Keep gathered themselves in the throne room to witness the knighting of 200 young men. The king and his queen, along with the 3 men of the King's Guard and the small council, stood at the front of the room. Before them were the men who were being knighted, each of them freshly anointed in the sept of Baelor. Now they would be sworn to knighthood by the knight who had decided that they were worthy of the honor. Sansa Stark stood beside her mother and brother throughout the ceremony. Areo had abandoned them to stand with Aerys and Lucas. From where they stood, Sansa could see her half-brothers and their cousin, Lord Edric Dayne. They were each to be knighted by a different man, Edric by Lord Beric, Arthur by Prince Oberyn, and Jon by King Renly. She thought that Robb should be knighted for his valor in battle, but her parents had both reminded her that knights were rare in the north and that Robb would have far greater honors as the heir of Winterfell. She enjoyed watching the ceremony, seeing the men all being sworn to knighthood by 50 or so, lords and knights from the various kingdoms. She hoped that they would all grow to be true men of valor and honor as knights should be. Later they would move to the outer courtyard of the castle, where a competition would be held for the 4 open positions of the King's Guard. Only 20 men would compete for the positions, all of them already approved by the king. The king's personal guard would reduce from 12 to 5 when his King's Guard was completed. She applauded with the crowds when the men were finished with the ceremony and the king announced that the men were now all knights of the realm. There was a feast afterward, held in the middle bailey. Table after table was arranged for the myriad of denizens in the castle to celebrate. More than 1,000 guests were at the tables, moving freely and laughing gaily. Sansa believed that there were more guests at this feast than had been present for the king's wedding feast and coronation feast earlier in the week. She was right on that matter, for this day's festivities were funded by many of the houses of the realm to honor the new knights. Table after table held fruits, pastries, pies, soups, stews, fish, crustaceans, and breads. In the center of the courtyard, a vast fire pit had been constructed, and the cooks turned spits which held the carcasses of several aurochs, goats, fowl, boar, and stags. The aromas were extravagant, luscious. They would sup before the competition and return again after the new King's Guard were chosen. This being the 3rd feast of the week, it was nice that the celebration was more relaxed. The revelers mingled between the tables while musicians played, though their tunes were often drowned out by laughter and conversation. Sansa was invited to join the ladies with Queen Arianne. She seated herself between Arianne and Elysian. Also at the table were Edabdera, Tian, and Edasand, Lady Sylva Sandagar, Ladies Jane and Jellen Fowler, Lady Jane, Lady Bright, Lady Marguerite Tyrell, Lady Leonette Fossaway, and several other young women from the Reach, Riverlands, Stormlands, and Vale. It was an honor to sit with the Queen and her ladies. For a change, even Ariad didn't seem to mind her position, perhaps because she liked the Dornish Queen and her cousins. As they dined, Lady Leonette approached Alice and spoke softly to her for a few moments. Alice seemed to agree with whatever Leonette had said, and the two excused themselves from the table. Sansa wondered what it was that her half-sister and Ser Garland Tyrell's wife had been talking about. Alusiate Sand followed Lady Leonette Fossaway, contemplating her words. Apparently, her brother Brian Fossaway, the new Lord of Ciderhall, had taken an interest in her during the various festivities, and wanted to speak with her. She recalled dancing with him at the wedding feast 3 times. He was in his mid-20s, and possessed a nice smile and warm hazel eyes. They walked to him, across the courtyard where he was seated with various lords and knights of the Reach. Leonette bade her wait a few paces away while she walked to fetch her brother. Alicern's attention strayed to the courtyard as she waited for Leonette and her brother to return. She saw Círdan Círdan with some of the Dornishmen, and her eyes stayed on him for a while. She thought of their kisses and felt herself grow warm. She wouldn't mind kissing him again. Mistress Eosanen, a voice beside her distracted her thoughts. She turned and smiled at Lord Fossaway as his sister had walked away, leaving them alone. I am glad that you agreed to speak with me. Shall we walk? He offered her his arm, which she accepted. I was intrigued by your interest, my lord, and therefore felt that I could not refuse to speak with you. I am certain that I am not the only lord who has taken interest in you. Indeed, my mother and father have both mentioned discreet inquiries about me. I am flattered that you wish to speak with me yourself. They were walking toward the edge of the yard, toward the godswood. I wish to speak with you first, to see if our interests align. She cocked her head, amused. And what particular interests are those? I wonder what you desire in your future. She contemplated his words as they entered the Godswood, formulating an answer. Truth be told, I am uncertain of my future. I know that I shall be visiting Winterfell at my father's request. Afterward, I do not know what I shall do. My brother Jon will be establishing himself here in King's Landing. My mother will be here attending the Queen. My father will be at his seat in Winterfell. My cousin, Lord Edric Dayne, will likely return to Blackhaven with my Aunt Illyria and Lord Beric Dondarrion until he is of age to rule Starfall. I enjoyed my life at Starfall. I enjoy working with the traders, the spice and cloth merchants who sell their wares. You enjoy business? I do. I learned the rules of trade, seated beside my mother, as she and our stewards conducted the business of Starfall. I would not mind continuing to work in trade, should the need arise, though I do hope for a good marriage, to whomever my parents believe is best. Dutiful, wise, and industrious, he mused. He smiled lightly at her. Would you like to be the lady of a noble house? She smiled to herself, casting her gaze downward. I would not mind the responsibility. He stopped and turned to her. She looked up at him, a small smile on her lips. His gaze was sober, but welcoming. My father died in the battle against Lord Tywin Lannister, and since then I have been assuming all the responsibilities of my new position. I am sorry for your loss, my lord. I lost some whom I held dear, though thankfully the gods spared my family. He bowed his head, acknowledging her sentiment. War brings loss to us all. Very soon I will be departing with the fleet to storm Dragonstone so that our king's position will remain secure. I wish you well in that endeavor. I thank you for your well wishes and for your condolences. I suppose that I should speak with you about why I wanted us to talk. Grinning, she answered him. You mentioned wanting to know what I desired in my future and what my interests are. He laughed nervously. I suppose I did. Mistress Axeline, I would like to seek your hand in marriage, should you be interested. She turned from him, not terribly surprised given the nature of the conversation, but still stunned that a lord would seek her hand in marriage. You should speak with my parents regarding your interest, Lord Fossaway. I intend to, my lady, though first I wished to seek your opinion on the matter. I am flattered by your interest, though I am curious why you would seek the hand of a bastard over that of a true-born noblewoman, including my half-sisters. I have met many noble women from the Vale, the Riverlands, the Stormlands, and many other lands. There are many lovely women in the Seven Kingdoms. Yourself amongst them. However, noble-born women tend to be more pretentious than I prefer. She raised a brow. And I as a bastard am humble enough. Unaffected, he replied, laughing. You are much more honest and forthright than is common among the women I have known. That, my lord, is because I am Dornish. He laughed again, entertained by her humor. Perhaps you are right. As for your half-sisters, they are young and I wish to marry sooner rather than later. I have also heard murmurings that they will likely be wedded into the north. Is all that happens at these feasts? Discussions about who will marry whom? Some of the time, yes. Other times we discuss war or affairs of the heart or running our holdings. War, romance, and business. The things which rule our world. Indeed, I also must confess I was further encouraged to ask for your hand after making a few inquiries about you. You have a good reputation by all accounts, and seem to have developed strong relationships with your father's true-born children. Ah, there it is. A good relationship with my half-brothers and half-sisters is hoped to carry on into the future so that any marriage I have might be used to build alliances via their marriages. I assume it helps that my brother has married the Queen's cousin. He hung his head, seeming somewhat embarrassed. I will not deny the truth in what you have said. She pressed her lips together, still considering his offer. You are within your rights to make a formal request to my parents, and I shall consider your offer. He reached for her hand and drew it to his lips. I shall do so, my lady, and I shall hope for your answer to be a favorable one. He kissed her hand and then allowed her to withdraw it to herself. Would you desire to continue talking with me in the gardens? I am not opposed to your company, my lord, she replied cordially, and allowed him to take her by the arm again as they walked in the Godswood. They spoke for some time as they followed the paths. He was a pleasant companion, affable and polite. While he wasn't overly handsome or charming, she found herself seriously contemplating his offer. At war with her consideration of his offer of marriage were her quite recent memories of kisses shared in the dead of night with Sir Daemon Sand. She knew that nothing could come of an interest in the bastard of God's grace, but she couldn't deny wanting to share at least one more kiss with him. They were seated on a bench near the heart tree when Robb, Arthur, and Tyene found them, each surveying them with interest. Alys grinned at them, knowing that they had appeared to ensure her well-being. "Lord Fossaway, may I introduce my half-brother Robb, the heir of Winterfell, my brother Arthur, who was knighted today, and my good sister Tyene Sand, daughter of Prince Oberyn Martell." The Lord of Cider Hall stood and greeted each of them in turn. "It is a pleasure to meet you. I was having a delightful conversation with your sister." He turned back to face Axlianne and bowed politely to her. "If you will excuse me, my lady, I will take my leave." "As you will," she replied, smiling lightly. She watched him walk away for some moments before looking to her family, each of whom was considering her with great curiosity. Tyene seated herself beside Alys, her head titled to the side. What did the Lord of Red Apples want? Alys looked between the three, still puzzling over the conversation she had been having with him. He asked if I would consider marrying him. What? They each asked in quick succession. Arthur looked in the direction that Lord Brian had walked. "Did you speak with him much during one of the feasts?" "No," she replied. "We danced 3 or so times at the King and Queen's wedding, but we spoke at length only today. He has admitted that he is seeking a good alliance and that he found me interesting." Robb laughed, shaking his head. "And for him a good alliance is you, a woman with ties to multiple regions." Alys gave him a somewhat scornful smile. "You are my brother, heir to Winterfell, and second in line to the seat of Riverrun. Tyene is married to Jon and cousin to the Queen. Jon is fast on his way to becoming one of the King's dearest friends. I'm a useful tool, and he knows it well." Arthur moved closer, concerned. "What did you tell him?" "I told him that I would consider his offer, and that if he truly wishes to marry me, that he must speak with my parents. Does that satisfy the three of you?" They all agreed, somewhat grudgingly, that they were content with what she had told them. She stood, not particularly in the mood to watch the knights compete for the 4 spots in the King's Guard. "I want to go into the city. Care to come with me?" All three grinned, though Robb seemed the most hesitant. "We don't have permission." "If we don't ask for permission, then we can't be told no," she replied. Tyene giggled beside her. "The two of you have fought in a war. What could your parents possibly have against a few hours spent within the confines of King's Landing?" "I'm ready to go," Arthur said. "The Saint-Sanin," and Arthur looked to Robb, challenging him with just a look. He relented quickly enough. "I'll come." A few moments later, they made their way out of the Godswood and to the stables so that they could ride into the city, away from the fanfare of court and the festivals of the day. Sacre Jon Sand stood behind the King and Queen as the 20 men seeking a position in the King's Guard entered the field. They would first compete against one another, and the winners would face off against the 3 current members of the King's Guard. Most of the competitors were already in service to the king in one capacity or another. A few others were allowed to compete based on their merits as swordsmen and their reputations. Jon saw Arianne shift uncomfortably in her seat as Sacre Dayne Sand walked amongst the competitors, his own name in contention for a position. Jon knew that Sir Daemon had a history with Queen Arianne. Many in Dorne knew that he had asked for her hand in marriage when they were younger. Jon looked at other Dornists in the crowds and could see some who watched him with discomfort. He could see others who likely knew nothing, cheering and raving for him, for a knight of Dorne to win a position on the King's Guard. For his own part, Jon didn't know if Sir Daemon's desire to join the King's Guard was good or bad. To be sure, Sir Daemon would protect the Queen at all costs, but would he do the same for the King? He was a good fighter, Jon knew, from the times they had sparred and from the reputation he had in Dorne. Daemon won his first matches with ease, besting Sir Permin Crane and earning a place in the final rounds of the competition. Sir Daemon Sand was the last to face off against the King's Guard. Lord Bryce Caron, Sir Robar Royce, and Sir Guyard Morrigan had each won a place in the King's Guard and would be sworn to the King's service at the end of the competition. If Sir Daemon won against Sir Barristan Selmy, the king would choose between Daemon and Sir Mincoe for the last position of the guard. They stepped into the fighting pen, armed for the contest. Sir Barristan Selmy garbed in the white of the King's Guard, and Sir Daemon Sand in relatively plain steel. They walked toward the king and queen, bowing respectfully, then they drew their swords, saluting one another, and then they paced to the opposite ends of the field. The men circled one another from a distance, observing one another. Both men were sluggish, showing signs of fatigue from the matches they had already fought that day. Jon was amazed at the elderly knight's stamina. He seemed more alert than Daemon. With cautious steps, they drew nearer, neither of them overconfident, each waiting for the other to make the first move. When they were near enough for their swords to touch, Daemon was the one to strike first. His movement was quick, but Barristan deflected his opponent with ease. Daemon sidestepped, dodging Selmy's blade. He thrust his own blade forward, metal clanging against metal as the swords met. Parry, thrust, sidestep. The men moved on the field with ferocity. The steel on steel echoed across the courtyard. Ser Barristan surged forward, battering Daemon, pushing the younger knight backward on the defensive. Arianne shifted in her seat, pushing herself upright, clutching her hands together, her jaw clenched as she watched her former lover be driven backward. Daemon regained the advantage with a well-placed strike, earning himself a few moments on the offense, pushing the Kingsguard back. The crowds cheered, some shouting for Daemon and some for Barristan. It wasn't long before Ser Barristan struck again, with force and fury. He drove Daemon back, and then drove him to his knees. Upon the ground, with a sword to his head, the young man yielded. The king stood, ordering the men to approach. Ser Barristan extended his arm to Daemon, and the younger man accepted his assistance in standing. The walk toward the platform stood before the king, as did the other men who had competed that day. "You have all fought well, good sirs. I am honored by your desire to swear yourselves to my service for life. Step forward, Ser Daemon Sand of God's Grace and Ser Aemon Kui of Sunhouse." The men took a few steps closer, separating them from the rest of the knights. "You have both fought valiantly. Ser Aemon, you have served me well in my personal guard these many months. While I am pleased by your desire to make a further commitment to the realm by serving in the King's Guard, I would have you remain in my personal guard." Edric Dayne's cousin seemed downcast, but he bowed humbly to the king and spoke his thanks before stepping away, leaving Daemon Sand alone on the steps to the platform. "Ser Daemon Sand," the king said, "I have seen your skills in battle and have heard many tales of you and of your loyalty to my queen." Daemon's eyes widened, but he otherwise reined in his emotions. "I believe that it is important to know how far a man would go to defend and protect his king and his queen, and I believe that you would make an excellent addition to the King's Guard." Daemon fell to one knee, in gratitude and submission to the king. He looked up, his eyes resting upon Arianne, before turning to the king. "I pledge my life to serve you, my liege." Rizerly Baratheon smiled at Ser Daemon, approving before he turned his face to the rest of the knights. He called forward his King's Guard, Lord Commander Barristan Selmy, Ser Preston Greenfield, Ser Zies Oakhart, Ser Robar Royce, Ser Gayard Morrigan, Ser Bryce Caran, and Ser Daemon Sand. The 7 knights knelt before the king. They proceeded to swear their oaths of service, 4 of them for the first time. Jon watched with fascination, wondering what it would be like to swear his life from now until death to the service of an order. He couldn't imagine a life where he could never marry, never love, only serve, though he doubted that Daemon joined simply out of a desire to serve the king honorably. He knew that Daemon loved Arianne, and from the king's comments, Ranny Baratheon seemed to know something of it as well.